Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about some news that came out a couple days ago, and maybe even more will be known by the time this video goes out, which it should be Monday when this goes out, but maybe there'll be more then. But obviously it's some updates about the Trails of Cold Steel anime that's coming out, which this is something I only found out was happening a couple months ago. But obviously we got some updates about it, specifically the production company that's animating it. Once again, I've been kind of out of the anime realm for a while, so I'm not really familiar with their work. But also just talking about it coming out in 2023. Subtitle for the anime is going to be The Northern War. And I was like, wait, what? Well, just Northern War. But I was like, holy crap. Okay, interesting timing first and foremost, because I am currently replaying through the Trails of Cold Steel games. Because if you're not aware, I'm completely and utterly obsessed with those video games. I take every opportunity to talk about them if I can. And funny enough, I am currently in my 4th playthrough of Trails of Cold Steel 3. If you're curious where I am currently at the time of recording this, I'm in Chapter 2. But regardless, that's just interesting to me because obviously the Northern War is something that gets talked about a little bit, but obviously like it's just more so in the vein of, right, what ends up happening to it being annexed and then brought in into Erebonia, as well as what that story meant for Reen, and obviously, you know, him losing control of his powers at the time and stuff like that, so on and so forth. Because I was curious for a long time what they were actually going to do for the anime, considering like everything that goes down in Cold Steel 1. I was like, well, I mean, I could see you animating that, but I'm like, I'm wondering what would you pick and choose to include, what to cut. Well, it seems like they're basically doing an original story in that universe. And because specifically the story is set place in Northumbria, because we're not following, because I was wondering, I was like, well, we got at least a gist of what went down based on like conversations between Reen and other characters, whether it be Aurelia, Wallace, or just him explaining what went down to like Elliot, Fee, and Laura when he met up with them in Sutherland in the 1st chapter. So we kind of got that gist, so I was like, oh, are they going to animate that and kind of expand upon it more? Which I think, well, I think that could be the end result of the anime. We'll get to that soon enough, but basically we're not following Reen at all. We're basically following a character. I think it's Lavie, which I would assume like Lavi might be how you pronounce that. I could be butchering that, but it seems like she's going to be our main protagonist in Northumbria, which Northumbria in that universe is something we haven't really tackled yet. Obviously there's other places as well. Northumbria is something we've heard about a lot, like for a while, like since the Sky games. And now we gotten pictures, we got a bit of an understanding of its circumstances, but this would be our first time really kind of living in Northumbria, which I think would be interesting. First and foremost, the Salt Pail. We've heard so much about it. We've seen bits and we've seen pictures and stuff like that. But to see and live in Northumbria with characters is going to be interesting, to kind of see the devastation and the hardship that is that place firsthand is going to be interesting. But my whole perspective on it, and I think what I was talking about before, is I get the feeling like we're probably just going to focus on this character Lavi and her experiences in Northumbria. Like maybe she's a Northern Jaeger, or maybe she's just a regular townsperson who lives there. Because we've learned a little bit, like for example, like I know Valerie, her family is kind of on the outs when it comes. They're kind of a cursed bloodline because they are basically related to the. They're related to the guy who basically abandoned Northumbria when the Salt Pail happened. So maybe we'll tackle some of that. Some of those elements will come up a little bit, because Valerie could easily be a person that's in this. Maybe even Sarah, because I think she has said that she does stop by Northumbria from time to time. Not that often. Obviously, like she doesn't have as much reason to go back anymore since the Empire's kind of become her home now. But obviously we'll probably spend a lot more time with the Northern Jaegers. They'll probably even talk about Sarah's dad. Like I said, there's not that many details out, but I'd be so curious to find out like what the time frame is. Like, is it going to be like, oh man, this is a couple months before the Northern War? Because the Northern War happened like, what, half a year before the events of Cold Steel 3. So that kind of still gives you about, like, it could take place like maybe like in that year period in between 2 and 3. Like it does leave that window open enough that like in that first half of that, you know, time frame, that those first 6 months of that year time skip, like maybe focus on that. Like I said, like getting to live in Northumbria would be kind of interesting. And then, like I brought up before, you culminate it with it ending with the Northern War. That'd be interesting and actually really depressing and sad. I mean, but considering that is that country's future, that would be interesting if that ends up being the case, because you figure it has to be included considering the subtitle is the Northern War. Because I don't know like how long it's going to be. I don't know if it is just going to be a single off OVA, because apparently Trails in the Sky have gotten OVA adaptations, which I wasn't even aware of that. But that is interesting regardless, because the end result could just be like, right, you never actually get to see Reen in them, but maybe you get to see like Le Guin and Wallace pop up in their Soldats, a whole bunch of Soldats invading. Because that's always the interesting thing I've talked about the Cold Steel games, is like, when you play, like, looking at the story from every other country's perspective, whether it's Crossbell, whether it's Liberl, Erebonia looks like the biggest warmongering douchebags, and then you get a different perspective by coming into the country. So getting Northumbria's perspective of like, here's basically the Empire trying to get back at us because of what the Northern Jaegers did, burning down Celtic. So now, like, now this war is kind of starting as the Northern Jaegers, like, getting their perspective on things is kind of interesting. Because obviously in 3, we get even more insight from them, but not as much. This could be a really deep dive into the inner workings of the Northern Jaegers, the inner workings, and just how everything works and operates in Northumbria. Like I said, more about the Salt Pale and stuff. But yeah, like, you could probably never ever actually see Reen, but maybe they could end up animating when he lost his control of his powers and he ends up wiping out all those archaisms and eventually passes out. Like, it might be a thing of you never actually get to see him on screen. All you see is Valimar. Maybe you get to see Altina and Sarah and maybe even Claire. Dude, I'm getting giddy thinking about it. But it's interesting because, like I said, I was under the impression, like I brought up way before, like we were going to get like a full-blown adaptation of the games, but we're getting something in that universe, so that's still something. It's really interesting. Like I said, Northumbria is not something that's really, it's been talked about and touched on, but we've never gotten a deep dive into it, so that's going to be pretty interesting to see, you know, once again, let other characters make appearances. And, like, it just gives you a very interesting perspective and story in this universe, so I'm actually really hyped to kind of see all that goes down into it. Obviously, once again, this news came out a couple days ago. Eventually, there will probably be even more news coming out. Like, when an official trailer or anything comes out, once again, it's not going to be coming out until, like, sometime in 2023. So, like, it's going to be a while. Animation takes a very long time. But either way, like, when future updates come out or when we do eventually get a trailer, I will be discussing it and talking about it. But yeah, obviously, these are just kind of my thoughts. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you like the idea of this being a Northumbrian anime and that it's, you know, tying into the Northern War in some shape or form? I'm sure a lot of people might have been expecting it kind of like me, where it was like, oh, I thought we were going to follow Class 7 and stuff like that. Are you disappointed? You know, maybe. I was consider myself slightly disappointed, but I'm still very interested to check it out. So do you feel the same way, or are you completely disinterested? I'd love to know, you know, what are some things you'd want to see from it? What are some things you expect to see from it? Just let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.